What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the channel. Today I wanted to do another MLB The Show 20 tips and tricks video for you, basically regarding franchise mode and what my number one tip is for managing your farm system in MLB The Show 20, and that is consolidation. Something that I think a lot of people overlook is the importance of your farm system and managing your farm system in order to get the proper development out of your players so that you can be successful in the future. Now, this is really important for franchises where your teams like the Pirates or the Orioles or whoever that isn't, they're not very competitive. They need a couple years to develop into something that can be competitive, but it's also important for teams that are good, because if you don't manage your farm system properly and you let your farm players just kind of waste away and regress and not play well or anything like that, you can end up hurting yourself a couple years into a franchise when you don't have anybody to trade away, you don't have anybody to bring up and replace players that might walk in free agency or something like that, and you can cause yourself a lot of problems. And so the number one tip that I want to give you guys is how to consolidate your players in your farm system to get yourself better talent and get yourself set up to manage your farm system better. You can only have so many players in your farm system, and in this franchise you guys will see that I will have a lot of really good prospects, a lot of guys with A potential, B potential, and stuff like that. And the reason that I have so many players with good potential is that, number one, they have to compete for jobs. Just because you have one guy that has A potential doesn't mean they're going to be successful, and it doesn't mean that they're going to get called up to the major leagues or develop well enough to come up to the major leagues. If you really want to be successful in terms of developing players that can take over a starting job on the major league roster, you have to have competition. Travis Swaggerty is a really good example of this. The Pirates have Travis Swaggerty in center field. If left by himself as the only lone center field prospect, he might cause my organization some problems, because if he just doesn't play well, he has a bad season or something, he's not going to develop him into what I need him to do. So you have to consolidate your players that are in your farm system to get players with better potential so that they can compete. And then once you have guys that can compete, like Brandon Marsh can compete with Travis Swaggerty, one of them, chances are, is going to play better than the other, and one of them is probably going to play well enough that they can play at the MLB level. And that's why you guys will see in my franchises specifically that I have a lot of guys that move up quickly through the farm system, because I have a lot of competition and I move up the players that are playing better. As you guys can see, O'Neal Cruz is up to a 77, Cole Tucker's a 74, Ke'Bryan Hayes got up to a 79 very quickly, Kevin Newman up to a 91, so on and so forth. And even some of these other prospects have progressed really well. Mason Martin started out as like a 55 overall player, and within a year he's up to a 65. The reason that these guys are playing well and the reason that these guys progress well is because they have competition with other players at their level. And so while Mason Martin might have progressed well, JJ Matijevic might not have progressed well, just as a general example. But you have competition there at that position, so that at least one person is probably going to be playing well enough that they can progress. And so let's get back to the topic, which is consolidating players to get better competition at your position. So let's say, for example, that in, maybe let's say at first base. Let's say at first base, I want to have another B potential prospect in AAA. That way they can compete with Mason Martin, and within a year I'll have a player that will be ready to come up and play first base for me. Let's say, for example, I plan on trading away Josh Bell or something, and I need another player that's around the same level as Mason Martin to compete with him. That way I know that at least I have a good chance of one of the two players that I have in AAA coming up and being a good starter for me. Well, what do you do to accomplish that? You trade away some of your lower end prospects in your farm system, and you consolidate them for a player with better potential. And so I don't mean trading away necessarily these young guys with B potential, which you could do. That is a consolidation method. Let's say that you need somebody within a relatively short period of time. I could flip Bob Barnard, Brian Nolad, and Salvador Escobar as a package deal to a team for one prospect that is significant significantly better and has a shorter timeline to the MLB. So I could trade the 43, the 43, and the 39 to get maybe another 65 overall with B potential back, and then I have competition at that position, and I'm setting myself up for success at that position because I know that having two guys that are 65 overall with B potential means that one of them is probably going to do well, and one of them is probably going to develop well and get up to the major league level quickly. But what I tend to do is I tend to take guys that have C potential, D potential, and I package them together to upgrade to guys with B potential. And this is something that people will overlook. A lot of times what people will do is they'll take guys in their farm system that are low overalls, C potentials, D potentials, and they'll cut guys like this. They'll cut guys like Tony Quintana, or they'll cut guys like Christian Reid, when in reality, they do have some amount of trade value. By cutting them, you're just purely losing out on that trade value. So what I could do here is I can go to my trade screen and I can take some of these guys that have C potential, maybe Gil Hernandez, Marshall Norman, Christian Reid, package those guys together and say, look, all I want to do is get back in return somebody with B potential, somebody that can compete for a job in the future, somebody that has a higher ceiling than these guys that have C potential. This is one of the best ways that you can help yourself out with your farm system, because you can reduce the number of bad potential players that you have in your farm system, and you can basically make it so that your farm system is foolproof. You make it so that you have all B and A potential players, and you're bound to have success with some of them. Even if you don't micromanage your farm system like I do, I go in and I set my AAA rosters, I set my AA rosters, the lineups, rotations, all that stuff. And I even play some games with my minor league system just to make sure that they're progressing well. But if you don't do that, if you're not planning to do that, make sure that you stock up on guys that have good potential. So trade away your C's, your D's, maybe even your B's to get A potential guys or B potential guys or whatever it might be that competition. So I package these guys together. I can go through another team. Let's say I said I wanted to get a first baseman. I can scroll through and say, what'll get me a first baseman with B potential? I can just scroll through the teams and find B potential first baseman. Maybe I'm looking for a lower end guy or something like that. But that's how you package the players together. Now, what you can do is you can hit suggest trade. If you press square, it brings up this suggest trade option, and you can pick what you want to get back in return. You can include prospects, MLB ready players. So if I go to prospects, it'll give me potential players back in return. So what you'll see here is I'm giving up 3 C potential players. Now, don't get me wrong. If they play well, their potential could go up to B. But I can trade these 3 guys right now to the Orioles to get a guy with B potential, and he automatically has a higher ceiling than anybody that I'm giving up in return. And you can scroll through these teams using R1, and usually you'll get a couple different offers. Like the Angels, I can get a relief pitcher with B potential, like I said. I can keep going through all the different teams, and I'm sure there are a couple different decent offers that you can get back in return. Here's another B potential relief pitcher. But that's what you want to do in terms of consolidating your players. You want to trade away those guys that have low potential, that are maybe low overall, or maybe you have some older guys in the farm system. You have guys that are 26, 27, 28 years old, and they don't ever really project out as MLB starters for you. Package them together, consolidate them for players that have B and A potential, and load up your farm system so that you will be successful in the future. Like I said, this is my number 1 tip to managing your farm system here in MLB The Show 20. If I scroll through my position, you guys can see I have pretty much all A and B potential players. If I go to my relief pitchers, I have a ton of A and B potential players. Same thing with my closing pitchers. Same thing with my catchers. I have A's, B's, a couple B's and A's up at the top. At first base, I have a whole bunch of B potential players. And I can scroll through every position, and you guys will see how many A and B potential players I have. And what this does is it makes it so that, like I said, your farm system is foolproof. Even if you don't go in and micromanage every single little detail like I do, you will have success with your development system. Like I said, the perfect example here was Brandon Marsh and Travis Swaggerty. Yes, I want Travis Swaggerty to be the future at center field for me, but I can't trust that on his own he's going to be the answer at center field. The reason being is he might not play well. He might not progress. So last year I brought in Brandon Marsh as a trade that was offered to me. He was roughly a 65 overall. He has succeeded in a superior manner to Travis Swaggerty, and he's playing well at the MLB level. And so I have that competition there. Because I brought in another A potential guy, I knew that I could get success out of at least one of them, or I had a higher chance of getting success out of one of them. So this is a good example of how this can play out, where, you know, maybe you want Travis Swaggerty to be the guy, but maybe he just needs more time, and you need somebody else that can come in and fill that spot. Jason Martin is no slouch himself either, and as you guys can see at my other positions, I've brought in a lot of A and B potential players, and I've consolidated a lot of my C potential, D potential, and even older guys together to get these guys back. That's another thing that you'll notice when you scroll through my team. I don't have many players that are old. If I go to my entire roster as a whole and I sort by age, maybe? Is it going to let me? How do I sort? Well, if I scroll through by age, you'll see that I don't have anybody. I don't think I have a single player on the team that's above 28. Obviously, the top end of my roster has some of these older guys that are, you know, 27, 28 years old. But as I start to scroll down through here, you'll see there aren't very many players that are above that age. You're looking at 24, 25, 21, 22, 22, 21, 19, 24 years old. You have all these young players. That is how you want to manage your farm system in the game, by consolidating players. Yes, it's not necessarily the most realistic way to do things, but if you want to be successful in the future with your franchises, make sure you're consolidating the players that aren't going to be useful to you for players that could be useful to you. Hopefully this helps you guys out in some way. Like I said, I wanted to bring you guys another MLB The Show 20 tips and tricks video for you, just to help out a little bit. I know I haven't covered it a ton lately. Let me know down in the comment section what you guys would like to see next on the channel. Make sure you leave a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel here if you're new. Like I said, comment down below with what you guys would like to see next. I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good one and stay safe.